Good evening, everyone. Добрый вечер. Меня зовут Марк и мой друг James. Good evening, everyone. My name is Mark, and with me today is Jim, my friend. And today we're going to talk about, as the title says, Beyond the Rink, Leadership and Life Lessons in Youth Hockey, and talk a little bit about youth sports. Just a little bit about my background. I am a youth sports executive. I was the executive director of Minnesota Hockey, which is all of the youth hockey in the state of Minnesota, for several years. I've been a youth hockey coach. I have done some work with USA Hockey. I also was lucky enough to be able to play ice hockey in the Soviet Union way back in 1988. You'll see here with Krilya Sovetov, one of the teams in the Soviet Elite League at the time. So I've been involved in hockey for many, many years, especially focused around youth hockey. Jim, why don't you let the audience know a little bit about your background, your hockey background?
Yeah, so I grew up playing hockey in Minnesota. Started when I was 5, 6. So would have been under the organization led by Mark during some of his time with Minnesota Hockey. Played hockey my whole life as a kid, and then in college played what we call club hockey, ACHA, during my time there. While I was studying ended up with a degree in economics. Couple years out of the game, and then now I've been coaching for, it'll be going on 12 years, I believe. So yeah, been involved either as a player, as a coach, probably 25 or more years now of my 36, most of it in and around Minnesota hockey and in and around youth hockey in Minnesota.
Okay, great. Audience members, we want you to know that we want this to be a little bit interactive. So if you have questions for us, please send them in the chat function, and they will gather them up, and we will answer them towards the end of the presentation today. We'll get to as many as we can. We'll try to save time so that we can answer all of them. We will also, at points in time during the presentation, ask you for some feedback. We understand, unfortunately, that we can't be there in the same room with everybody, but if you want to provide us your feedback, it will get to us, and then we will share that with the whole group. So we want this to be a little bit interactive, even though it's a live stream. So let's get started, Jim. You talked about playing hockey. Why did you decide to go from playing to coaching?
Well, that's a good question. If it were up to me, I probably wouldn't have. I would have liked to have played longer when I got done with college, and started moving on to the next stage of my life. I actually didn't get into coaching right away. Took a bit of a break from hockey, and knew it was a pretty significant time commitment, and kind of made that choice. But it wasn't very long until I realized that I definitely missed it, whether it was player or coach. I missed being part of it. And so after a couple years, I got back involved with our association, the same one I grew up in. And yeah, I was really just ready to, first and foremost, just be a part of the game again, active in it. And I wanted to give back to the community that I had grown up in, and the association, and be a part of it, and get involved. And, the one thing led to another, and somehow 12 years have gone by, and stayed involved with coaching, and can't really imagine it any other way now.
Okay. Yeah, I had much the same experience. I grew up playing in Minnesota, and then actually went and played in Russia for a year, Soviet Union for a year, but wanted to stay in the sport. I think one of the things that I think about hockey is that it's one of those sports that when you start it, you just never seem to be able to give it up. It sort of stays with you. And then you start coaching, you start getting into the administrative side. Again, I was lucky enough on the administrative side to be able to work with some of our U.S. national teams that both played actually in Russia, the World Championships in Moscow, and the World Junior Championships, which were held in Kazan. So you sort of stay in hockey. It never really leaves you. I think you get it in your blood, and it just never leaves.
Yes, I would definitely say I went through an experience where, not being actively involved in hockey felt like something was missing, even kind of a part of the identity, and that I definitely, felt really compelled and even a need to be involved. And part of it's just loving, you miss going to the rink, and it's a reason to go to the rink, and you're just happy that you get to go to the rink almost every day at times.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit. You made that transition from player to coach. Tell us a little bit about some of the differences in that transition, the differences between being a player versus a coach.
Yeah, that is a challenge, especially early on, and honestly, an ongoing challenge is that as a player, you can have a narrower focus on what your role is, what you can contribute, how you can impact, the game really. And as a coach, you realize that you've got to take a broader view, a much broader perspective and many perspectives into account. You're more concerned with coordinating a number of things. And so, that would probably be the biggest difference, is that as a player, and we even encourage our players, right? What can you control? How can you narrow your focus to your role and not let what's out of your control impact, your contribution? As a coach, it's kind of the opposite. You must be concerned with many things. And then it does kind of bring you back to, there's still a lot out of your control. Really, you have to just, find the best way that you can contribute, even as a coach. And, and that was early on. It felt like being a player when I was learning and mentoring under other coaches, where it's like, how can I show up to the rink today and help and learn and help? So there's a lot of similarities. As a coach, there's certainly a broader concern that you must have for the coordinations of a team, program, etc.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Can you tell our audience about your youth hockey coaching experiences? What has been the most enjoyable part? What's been maybe the most challenging part? And maybe some of the unexpected benefits or challenges that you've run into since you've been coaching?
The most rewarding part really is seeing players and people grow and develop. Especially now, I've been in it long enough to see some players go from really being the age of player where they struggle to stand up on skates to the age of player where they're, at the end of their career and they've matured physically and mentally, and they're going out into the world to do what they will. And so that's, even at the hockey level, it's super rewarding to see players struggle, improve, and grow. And from the broader view, seeing these people develop from where they started, and that's definitely the most rewarding part. And sometimes it's a good way to stay grounded. Sometimes you can lose sight of that, with this is what we're focused on and the competition and et cetera. And so that's a good way to stay grounded as a coach. And then I would say the biggest challenges have related to that in the sense that you do have to learn that there isn't a lot of control just because you think you have some good ideas and a good plan, and that we're just all going to show up, and if we just work hard, things should go our way. And it's just not that simple. You're working with people and all of the things. And so as a coach, that biggest challenge is finding that balance of what is in my control, what isn't, and how can I continue to move forward positively, especially when things may feel out of control or like they're so challenging that where can you find that positivity moving forward? And so kind of, like I say, it kind of comes back to the same point where that most rewarding thing is, remembering that this is about long-term development and growth. And when you can remember that, you can usually deal with those challenges as well, that yes, there's a lot out of my control. I need to just keep showing up with that positive attitude and helping everybody work together to improve.
Yeah, I just have to interject one quick story here. But probably most of our audience knows that the U.S. education system is a little bit different than the Russian education system. So when players generally move from high school, usually age 17 or 18, and move on to university or sometimes technical school. But I think one of the I guess sort of benefits, or one of the highlights for me in coaching is when I would get players coming to me and they wanted to talk about what they should do for university. And again, they were not going on to play college. They were not going on to play university hockey, or they were basically finished, but they would come and ask me questions and ask for advice sort of outside the hockey arena. And that was always sort of one of the things that I really enjoyed about coaching and coaching younger players.
Yeah, I actually appreciate that you say that. And kind of to add to that anecdote, I've now been in it long enough that, a lot of what we're doing maybe doesn't set in while we're coaching a 15 or 16-year-old. And then, so we run an alumni game where players who have gone through our system come back, and it's great to see one, that's a very rewarding thing, that they've all gone off to different places doing different things, came from different walks of life, went to different walks of life, but everybody loves to return to the locker room and that relationship that they had with each other. And yes, it's very rewarding when sometimes even, somebody may be 25 or 28 and they maybe don't even come right out and say it, but they communicate with you one way or another that it's like, I get it now. I get what you were doing, what we were doing. And they get that where they were at that age. And so that's very rewarding, even long-term after you've been interacting with them directly as a player.
Right. So this is a good place to make that transition then. Let's go talk about leadership and life lessons of youth hockey. And when we talk about youth hockey, I want to define youth hockey as players between the ages of, let's say, 5 and 6 years old and 18. Once you, in the United States education system, at least, once you get beyond 18, you're sort of university or outside of the public education school system. But first of all, so let's make that transition. And first of all, before we do that, I just want to ask audience members, if we do have members out there who have played or maybe are playing youth sports right now.
Mark, give me 1 second.
Okay. As we go through this process, again, we want to be as interactive as we possibly can. So again, those of you who have played youth sports or are playing youth sports, or maybe it's not youth sports, maybe it's another outside school activity, will want to get some input from you later on. So just in the chat function, type in and say, yeah, I play youth football. I play on the basketball team. I'm on the theater group or whatever it is. And then we'll come back a little later on and ask for some input. So, Jim, one thing everybody thinks about is, when in youth sports, think about becoming a professional athlete. In the case of hockey, we're talking about in Russia, somebody going to the Continental Hockey League, the KHL, possibly onto the NHL. But in reality, very few youth players ever get to that level where they essentially, that's their profession. So what other values and skills, if we can call them life skills, do young hockey players get out of their hockey playing experience?
Yeah. Really, it's all of the life skills, and leadership, communication, being part of a team, being part of a collaborative effort, being a good teammate, learning what being a good teammate means. And that can look a lot of different ways. We all can bring different things to the table, right? And there's different talent levels, skill levels, different sizes of people, and all the things. And so you really learn on a hockey team and in a hockey setting and youth sports in general. But I think hockey is such a synergistic team sport that you really understand both. How do I want to put this? There's only so much you can contribute, and yet that can be so massive. And that when you collect people and you all come together and believe in it and all contribute what you really can, it's hard to describe what is possible with that. And then that applies everywhere in life and all the things that you'd like to do. And, kind of zooming that back into where through hockey, you're going to be challenged. You're going to face adversity. You're going to be frustrated. And then it's on you. And that's, as a coach, our job to help, face that adversity and deal with the frustration and move forward. And so you're exercising those muscles, which will be applied to anything in life, whether it's academics or, your career or relationships, and that ability to, work within the team and communicate, set goals together, assess them, and then work at them, take that goal and turn it into daily action and work towards that goal. And yes, that applies to any progress you would like to make in life. Again, academic, career, relationships. I'm I'm learning to apply a lot of it within. I have one significant teammate in raising young children, and that is very challenging and frustrating. And a lot of that being a good teammate and what can I contribute, and very much applies in our teamwork. And there's a bigger team than us two that it takes to raise children and a family and exist in a community. And so it applies there, and how in our neighborhood and broader community and the hockey association, how we help each other and have contributions from everybody. So yeah, that's a long way to say how I said it at the beginning. I think all the life skills are, put together in that setting.
Yeah. So I'm not sure. I went into the chat and somebody had chatted in that they were part of gymnastics, which is another sports team that, sort of seems individual, but you really are part of a team as well, and learn many of these life skills. Anyway, in doing that, I'm not sure if I'm on screen right anymore, or if I've gotten turned sideways. On my screen, I'm turned sideways.
I see you sideways on mine.
I'm actually going to try turning my camera off real quick and then turning it back on and see if that will straighten it out. Hopefully. Okay. If not, I'll stand on my head maybe and make it work that way. So just bear with me for a second. I don't know. For some reason, I'm still sideways. I don't know what happened. But let's actually keep moving forward. There we go. Let's keep moving forward. I just wanted to list some of those life skills that we're talking about. And then when I get done listing this, ask our audience members if there's other things they can think of. So, you talked about leadership, working with others, communication, problem solving, taking direction, giving advice, goal setting, both individually and as a group, reflection and assessment. How am I doing? What do I need to change? Goal revision, celebrating small victories, which I think is very important to learn. And then sticking with something until completion, which I think sometimes is very important. You just don't want to get frustrated and quit doing something. So audience members, if there are other life skills that you can think of that you've gained maybe from your youth sports experience, from other organizations you've been a part of, we would like to hear from you and to be able to add those to our list. And again, part of that is, as we work through this list, are there the audience members? Are there some ones in there that you think are more important than others? And maybe let us know what you think about that. So moving on, Jim, can you talk a little bit about hockey coaches and how they help develop and instill these life skills and values in their young players?
Yeah, it's day to day, it comes down to we're trying to put them in that position and that environment where they're going to be challenged and frustrated and face adversity and have successes, and find a good balance between both of those two, right? Where, it may not be beneficial to them long term if something's easily successful either. And so then as a coach, really it's you observing them and help, recognizing where they're at with whether it's struggling with a skill or and oftentimes I don't want to make it seem like players are always frustrated or struggling, but it feels like as a coach, then that's really where we can make an impact in helping them, keep working through it and find new confidence and the confidence to continue to persevere and to improve past that point of frustration, and helping them understand that frustration, challenge is very much a part of growth. Without it, there really is no growth. If you want to get strong, you're going to have to feel weak at some point. If you want to get smarter, you're going to have to feel dumb sometimes, for lack of a better way to put it. And so then as a coach, it's really a lot of, this isn't it. I can't think of necessarily a specific instance, but that's what we're doing is being immersed within that environment and helping these players and the group collectively as well work through that, right? It's relationships. A team is a bunch of relationships. And so we often deal with challenges but with relationships and getting these people to put aside those differences or challenges or disagreements, and okay, how can we come together, move forward, believe in the same thing, and believe that even despite those differences, we can together accomplish something. So really, as a coach, I don't know how else to put it other than getting immersed in that environment and helping them grow and succeed in that environment. There's a quote I like that I try to use as a refrain in a lot, especially now as a parent. The gardener's job is not to make the plant grow. The gardener's job is to create optimal conditions for the plant to grow in. And that pretty much sums it up. It's as a coach, it's not my job to make them grow or do anything, but to provide optimal conditions for that to happen. And so that's, maybe a shorter way to put it. We're the gardener and we're trying to create good conditions for them to grow in.
Right. And does age make a difference? As a coach, do you approach things differently, both from teaching on ice skills as opposed to sort of what you can do with off ice things with younger players as opposed to older players? And how do you approach that?
Yes and no. It's the age makes a huge difference. And yet the principles are pretty much the same in that we're trying to instill that perseverance to continue and seek growth and improvement through the ups and downs. And so, yes, that looks different for a 6-year-old. That can be as simple as like, wow, you skated farther today than you ever have before when you didn't want to. They fell 3 times, and after that third time, they didn't want to get up. And you may just be looking for almost any disguised method you could think of to get them to skate again. And then that's a huge success. And, then for a 16-year-old, that may look quite a bit different. And there may be, some deeper detail into what the challenge they're facing is and to what extent we're willing to discuss, why they, and that's, it's fun. It's different. Like as they get older, it becomes a little more intangible as far as like, it isn't as simple as like you had a great day because you could skate the full length of the rink today. And so then that becomes a challenge with the older players, is helping them keep the belief that even though it wasn't as simple as skating the full rink today, that they're making a contribution, they're making a deposit on their improvement, even when it doesn't feel like it. So yes, quite different dealing with the, other ends of the age and that kind of, it's a spectrum that shifts as they go. But, concluding that the principles are really the same as far as, how you're trying to facilitate their improvement and growth.
Mm-hmm. And you talked a little bit about facing those challenges or players facing challenges. So what are some of the tricks of the trade that you use as a coach to face those challenges? Because again, when I was coaching, some days were better than others. And some days a player felt like they had a great day, and other days they felt it was very challenging and were a little bit down. So as a coach, you were challenged to make sure the player sort of understood that not every day is going to be the same. Not every day is going to be great. There are going to be challenges you're going to face. How, as a coach, do you face that challenge to make sure that you can address those when you see those types of things happening?
Yeah, again, and that's the difference in the ages. The younger a player is in a group and a team and whatnot, maybe the easier it is to disguise learning within just kind of making it fun, making it feel like a game, working skills in that rather than just set up some cones and say, this is our skill we want to improve, finding ways to integrate skill into that. And so disguising the lessons. And then I guess I would say, yeah, as you get older, it's a good question, because that as coaches, then that's what we deal with too, is that some days are better than others. And so a lot of it is kind of demonstrating and reflecting the same thing, in that I know you feel challenged, and that challenges me, and this is the way I'm going to demonstrate the handling of that challenge. Trying to remain positive, trying to remain focused on what can I control, what action can I take that will move us forward. And so, yeah, the older they get, the more it kind of feels like a demonstration of what will help them versus a explaining what will help them, if that makes sense. Again, it's back to that. As a coach, you realize pretty quickly, and then you can be a slow learner of how little you control and how a lot of it is really a demonstration of what you hope to be reflected in your players and team. And so that's what I've found is kind of the most effective, is in a way like, hey, we're going through the same things. Like, this is us coaches are challenged, and this is the way we're choosing to meet it on a daily basis, is remain positive and give our best effort, try to bring our highest and best self and contribute that.
Okay. I want to go back to the audience again and ask another question for some more input, if you would like to share. How, for audience members, how have your sport coaches or your teachers helped you develop life skills beyond the rink or the playing field or the classroom? And maybe the second part of that to ask is, when did you realize that actually happened? One of the things that you talked about earlier, Jim, was the fact that you will have former players now come back to you, several years later, and sort of, tell you, oh, now I get it. Now I get what you were trying to do. And I think that's an important part for people to understand, is that when you're going through that process, you may not understand right away, but at some point it clicks. And maybe that's later in the hockey season. Maybe that's the next hockey season. Maybe that's 5 years from now. But at some point it does click, and you realize that, oh, okay, now I understand what he was trying to say. So again, audience members, if you have life skills you've learned through your activities, please let us know what those are. And, again, when you finally realized that was happening. Changing subjects just a little bit again, Jim, sometimes, at least in the United States, parents can be a little over-invested in their child's youth sports experience. How, as a coach, do you talk about these issues with parents of players? And how do you approach talking to parents about those life skills that you're trying to teach their young children?
Yes, that is a good question. I would like to preface this with, in my 12 years coaching, I've had a very good experience in that way. There's been some situations and a couple of times where we've been at pretty much an impasse, but for the most part, I would like to give the parents that I've been with a lot of credit for being good sports parents. Typically what you're, parents, as a coach, one thing to remind myself is that the parents are well-meaning. Of course they're well-meaning, and they have their child's best interest in mind. And that can get clouded with emotion. And it can also come from, a very narrow focus where they are focused on their child. And so that's usually where we start. Oftentimes, if there's any kind of challenge or issue, there's, it comes from a place of reaction on their part. And so then as a coach, we don't want to react emotionally to their reaction. Take the time and try to respond with a clear head and give them that opportunity as well. And oftentimes, sometimes they just just have to kind of feel like they did that, react emotionally, and then we can usually move forward. If not, it really is just trying to help them zoom out a bit, whether that be from their individual player to the team and the bigger picture, or that be their individual player right now and where they're at right now, and that this is a long journey and their growth and development is a long journey, and that we want their, and this again changes with age too, but that especially as they age, we want, and they want as parents, their child to advocate for themselves, and they want their child to face adversity and learn to persevere. These days, especially, we talk a lot about resiliency, and these players, and sometimes, again, this is back to the parents, they're well-meaning, they want their child to be resilient, and so you may have to remind them that this isn't going to help your child be resilient if you're their advocate. And again, another metaphor that I like to think of, and sometimes parents need reminding of this, where, if a butterfly is struggling to get out of the cocoon and you pull it out of the cocoon, its wings will not have developed and it won't be able to fly. The struggle out of the cocoon is the butterfly's chance to develop the strength in its wings to fly. And it's very simply put, but it really does put it into perspective that that's what you may be doing as a parent. If you're trying to pull that child out of the cocoon, its wings may not develop. And so, that typically I wouldn't even say I've gotten that far in many real life instances. It's usually pretty simple, where let's all take a deep breath, look at the bigger picture, and agree that we have the child's best interest in mind. We have the child's growth and development, both as a hockey player and a person, in mind, and that we believe we're doing the best we can. And it typically everyone can agree that's the case, and we move forward. So yeah, parents can get emotional and honestly can't necessarily be blamed for that. That's being a human. And so much like coaching players, we confront it the best we can and try to move forward positively.
Okay. And again, I want to go back to our audience. If you would like to provide some input, can you tell us some examples of how your parents helped you develop life skills along the way? Maybe as part of your youth sports experience, a different activity, but how have your parents helped you develop those life skills and grow those life skills? So not every hockey player is a star, or will be a star, or will be on the first line getting all the playing time. Players might be disappointed in their playing time or their role on the team. How do you work with a disappointed young hockey player?
That's a good question. It's the best part about hockey. Something I love so much about hockey is how much it takes a team full of really good teammates, and that can look different. And so, yes, oftentimes you may have a player that feels disappointed in where their contribution is. And so it's really just reminding them that it's not because we don't believe that they are or could be capable. It's because that's where they're at, and that the best way for them to move forward, whether it's accepting their role or attempting to change their role, is that, what can you control and what can you do to improve and what can you do to be a really good teammate? That's what we need, is really good teammates. Hockey takes every role there is from the leaders, and the leaders can be people that don't play that much, but are a very good teammate, an integral part of the relationships that make a team successful. And, we need people to score. We need people to be good at penalty killing. We need people to be good at everything. And we need everybody to care to support each other in that. And so oftentimes I think, again, it's kind of the same as the parent conversation. It's same as the growth conversation, helping them zoom out, assess where they're at, assess where they'd like to go, and what kind of action would get them there, right? How can I improve my skill to be a bigger contributor? And how can I improve as a teammate functioning in this system that will also, help me advance within the team as far as, especially that perspective of playing time, contribution, etc. So it's kind of all comes back to that same growth and how we facilitate growth.
Let's talk a little bit about goal setting, because I think everybody uses goal setting, whether it's on their youth sports team, their hockey team, in life, whatever. As a coach, as you plan for a hockey season, you set goals for the team as a whole, but then, how do you communicate those goals to the players, and how do you have them how do you help them set their goals for the year as well? And when do you go back and take a look at those goals, and how do you do that?
So I think, kind of relating this back to the life skill thing, I think the ability to set a goal, especially a challenging one, maybe kind of a far off one, maybe even kind of an unreachable one. And then the real life skill comes in the ability to then reverse engineer from that goal, and reverse engineer from, okay, so I want to, let's say from an individual perspective, I want to make the varsity team or make this team, or I'd like to score more goals. Okay, that's a good goal to set. Now, how are we going to achieve that? Well, if I want to score more goals, I need to skate better, stick handle better, shoot better. Okay, so how can we achieve that? Well, so I need to practice my skating more. I need to practice my shooting more. I need to practice my stick handling more. Okay, when are we going to do that? Where are we going to do that? Well, I can roller skate in my driveway, so I'm going to do that 3 times a week. I can shoot pucks in my garage, driveway, basement, so I'm going to do that 3 times a week. I can practice my stick handling 3 times a week. Okay, so now let's make a schedule of Monday I'm going to skate and shoot pucks. Tuesday I'm going to stick handle, right? So we took this goal, and now how can we take our focus off of that goal and make it daily action? And daily action that, in fact, helps us not focus on the goal, but live in the moment and do what we can to achieve that goal. And then again, back to the kind of the big lesson thing, in some ways, if we can do that, and then if you can, as a player or person, feel like you really gave yourself to that endeavor, the outcome kind of doesn't matter, right? If we feel like we did give ourselves to that effort. And then that's, so bringing it to the team thing, yes, that's as coaches, we look at, what are we capable of? How can we challenge ourselves with that goal? How can we reverse engineer that? And then how can we bring that all the way down to the individual level? What can each of you do towards this goal? What can we do collectively? And then again, that's kind of as the year goes by, you're going to reassess where you're at on that path. And again, then as a coach, it kind of comes down to, I don't care if we achieve that goal or not. Success is, did we give ourselves to the endeavor? If this is what we said we were going to do, did we commit ourselves to that and follow through with it? And then that's, I think, one of the biggest things I've taken, and life is ongoing learning. I'm still learning to apply this, but especially in this world where things can pull you places, it's good to have that function of, I'm going to take daily action. I'm going to kind of block out the rest of the noise, even the noise of my goal. I'm going to block out the noise of what looks like other people doing other things, and I'm going to take my daily action. And so, yeah, we're as a team and as coaches, we're kind of applying that reverse engineer and encouraging. Let's commit ourselves to that. Let's commit ourselves to it. Positive attitude, full effort, and then we'll go from there. We'll go from there.
Mm-hmm. And we've talked a lot about life skills and part of how you instill those, but as a coach, you're also in some senses responsible for developing, in this case, hockey skills, stick handling, skating, shooting, goaltending, whatever it is. So how do you integrate pulling those hockey skills into some of the life skills and kind of combining those and making that work?
Yeah, that's honestly, I think it really improving your hockey skill over the course of, say, 2 or 3 months is actually quite attainable, especially at home and not necessarily on the ice. Or, one option would be we could hire a coach and we could buy ice time and do a ton of on ice skill development. But you can also just go out in your driveway with a stick and ball. And so working with kids and that is one of the very rewarding things is when a player will really commit to the consistency of making that deposit. Each week they've stick handled 3, 4, 5 times, like they said, shot pucks. And then when they feel that improvement on the ice, and that really sets in that, hey, I made a choice, I took action, I did it consistently, and I can feel the results. That's then an example of, hey, that applies anywhere. It's maybe not all so cut and dry as if I stick handle consistently, I will improve on the ice with my stick handling. But that same function applies to pretty much anything in life, academics, career, relationships, all of it. Again, so the skill development becomes not only a good way to help players improve, but it is quite a tangible, if they do what we said and put in that effort, it becomes quite tangible to them, which then can apply to just about anything. And they can kind of always reference that experience that, hey, I took agency, I made a choice, and I improved because of it.
Right. Again, I want to go back to our audience. We have one question in from our audience, an audience member that we'll get to in a little bit, but I want to go back to our audience at this point again and ask, do you think youth sports is the proper place to teach other life skills to participants in those sports? What is audience members, what are your thoughts on that? Are youth sports the right place to do that? So let's switch subjects again and talk just a little bit about specialization. We see, at least in the United States, and I think honestly in Russia as well, specialization at a very early age. If you want to be a hockey player, you have to start playing hockey at a young age and do only that. How do you think that has hurt the ability to really teach some of these life skills and create sort of a well-rounded person that I think most people would agree might be a better long-term outcome?
Yes. That brings in a number of topics. I think typically with the early specialization, we see parents that are over-invested in seeing their child's career culminate into what they see as success, typically playing at a higher level. In America, that would often be trying to play college hockey. And they may even rationalize that they may save money if their child can get a scholarship, which if you're specializing in hockey early, you won't be saving money. But so I think even if that was your goal, see your child play at a higher level, you do them a disservice that they would specialize early, because hockey, though very specific in the skills that are required, really being a good hockey player is being a good athlete, being a well-rounded, you move well, you are coordinated, you are strong, you are balanced. You don't need hockey to become a strong, coordinated, balanced person, especially from the age of 6 to 13, 14, 15. All the sports throughout a calendar year will help you improve coordination and strength and balance. And not only will it help you improve those things to where you can come back to hockey, then those skills those specific skills that you need to improve, you can compound on that improvement in those athletic abilities. So you don't need the hockey just to improve the hockey skill, as well as hockey is not, especially skating, it's not a natural movement. Our body isn't really meant to skate well. So you can very easily lead to overuse injuries by skating too often for too long of a period of time. It's very, you need to take a break, and mentally you need to take a break. It's so that's where I think it all leads to a better balance. We see kids that they become lethargic earlier than you shouldn't see a 14-year-old who just isn't interested in practice today. He's not having fun on the rink because it's just one of many of these days that he's had. It's no longer novel. So yeah, really all of that, I think the risk you're taking with early specialization, I do not believe is worth the reward you think may be at the end. If not, going so far as to say that if that's your goal, I very much think you should avoid specialization, and have a diverse skill set and a diverse mentality that prepares you for when things get serious and difficult. That diversity and balance in your life will allow you to attack that challenge with, what it requires to make it at a higher level. So, I think, again, it's back to, I think most people think they would be specializing for the right reason, but oftentimes that's misplaced intent and can have the opposite effect, which that's, as a coach, it's a sport and it's a game, and we should be having fun and not lose sight of, if hockey isn't fun, then what are we doing here? So, it's a good reminder for all of us that, like, let's make sure we're having fun. And sometimes that means not doing it in the summer and playing baseball with your friends.
I want to go to our audience question at this point. The question is, what's one story from your coaching or playing career that really illustrates how hockey can shape a young person's character?
I got probably a few I could pick. One short one is, there was 2 times in my playing career where I wasn't on the team or where I thought I would be to start the year. And it was very challenging. There's a number of circumstances at play, but both times I remember kind of getting to the same place mentally where it wasn't that I wanted to quit, but there was this sense of resentment, and where I wasn't sure if I could bring my best, I wasn't sure if I could move forward the way I was kind of used to, and had to, I worked through that emotion. And then it was like, well, no, you love hockey too much to do anything but show up and play and make the most of it. And so it happened when I was about 10 or 11. And the team I ended up playing on, we would be together every other year then going up. And most of my best memories are actually with that group. It put me in a position to become a leader, and develop in different ways than I wouldn't have been if I'd have stayed where I thought I should be. And so then that prepared me again at high school level, not getting to where I thought I'd be right away and having to just show up and say, I'm going to do my best. And as it happened, it didn't take me that long that year to get where I thought I should be and improve and show the coaches that, I could contribute. So that was probably the biggest thing, is a couple moments in my life where my character was, I wondered how I would proceed. And then it was like, wow, we're all we can do is show up and keep trying. I love it too much not to. And, that's applied in a lot of places in my life where it throws you challenges, and the times where it feels like, I don't know what, and then remember that, nope, keep moving forward and one foot in front of the other, and with a positive attitude and the best effort that you can.
Yeah. I'll add one experience to help answer that question as well. I had a player on one of my teams who was his first year on my team, and was not the most skilled player, but had a great positive attitude, really loved coming out every day on the ice. And he came to me one day and he said, Mark, I sort of understand that I'm not the best player on the team. He said, I think what I really need to do is focus on some other things outside of hockey. And hockey takes up so much time that I really don't have the time for that anymore. And I said, I understand that perfectly. But what I asked him to do, I said, because you enjoy it so much, why don't you come and be our team manager? And help out from that standpoint. You'll be around the guys that you grew up with, that sort of thing. And so he did. He came in and was team manager for us for a couple of years. And he's one of those kids that later on, 26 years old or 27 years old, now on in life, came back to me and he said, the lessons I learned playing hockey, I took with me. But even more importantly was the ability for you to see that I enjoyed this. And although I had to go and do something else, you still kept me involved in it, which was of great benefit and helped me much later in life to understand how things work and how I should treat things. We've got another quick question here. Mark, can you share more about your experience playing hockey in the Soviet Union? Certainly I can. I grew up in Minnesota playing hockey, in my high school days. The town I grew up in actually didn't have official high school hockey. We had a club team, and I went on and played in university. And after that, wanted to keep playing hockey, but wasn't quite sure how to do it. So to be honest with you, I had moved to Moscow for work things and had the opportunity to say, I want to keep playing hockey. So I started asking around and asked if I could play. I went out to the ice arena that Krilya Sovetov at the time was their home on Telbukina, and just asked if I could play hockey. And they invited me in and sort of figured out where I was and then progressed. So unfortunately, I never got to play with the elite level team. I was the team one level below that, but practiced, played, and had an amazing time. And I will tell you from a cross-cultural experience, I'm a Russian speaker, although I've lost a lot of my Russian at this point. But to learn a foreign language and to be put in that type of situation, you learn your language very quickly and very well. So it was an amazing experience for me. I know now we have many Russian players in the NHL, And I hope their experience in the NHL and junior clubs in Canada and the US and so on and so forth was as fun as it was for me. Still have a couple of people I keep in touch from that point in time, and just exchange emails and letters and cards every once in a while. So an amazing experience, a very, very fun experience. If there are other questions, please feel free to ask them. We'll wait here for a couple minutes. Jim, just to sort of button things up. Tell us how again, you touched on it a little bit, but tell us how learning the life experiences while you were a player have helped you later in life. You've touched on them a little bit along the way, but if you can kind of summarize things and button up here.
I think for me, and this is to kind of piggyback your just hearing you talk about your experience in Russia playing, it was the relationships, right? It was the being a part of it and developing relationships that could have been anywhere as it happens, and so you got that certain place and cultural experience. But that's what I've learned in hockey and life, is that it's the relationships that make it what it is, and that anything you're doing, unless it's, to go live in the woods by yourself, is relationships, and the positive experience, the negative experience of it is based on those relationships. And so, yeah, when I went to school and played, it was not far from where I grew up here, but it was far enough to not be here. And I made lifelong friends. Like I said, the ones that we did play with here when we grew up, and players I've coached come back at Christmas. They're upset if it doesn't work. And so, yeah, that to me, there's a lot of the details we talked about, and growth and the ability to be consistent and disciplined if there's anything you'd like to achieve. But ultimately, yeah, the relationships, and hockey puts you in a unique position to develop really strong relationships with the people that you're doing it with. That's what brought me back into the game, is needing those relationships, wanting to be part of a team with those kind of relationships. And then, yeah, that I think carries me forward in all aspects of my life, where that connection with people and that collective effort, as we all navigate our life and life, yep, such as it is.
Yeah, good. Jim, thank you very much for your time. You're a wealth of knowledge. Again, thank you very much. And to our audience out there, thank you very much for your input and your participation, your questions. It's been very enjoyable. It's an interesting subject, and maybe we can talk more in the future about it. Again, thank everybody very much.
Yes, thank you. And I appreciate this opportunity.